Welcome. This is my fourth update of the status of solar cycle 25. It covers Carrington rotation 2252, which corresponds to the dates the 15th of December 2021 to the 11th of January 2022. I'm doing this by Carrington rotation because that's the way we can compare the same face of the sun each time we look at the solar cycle. So what's going on? We're past solar minimum. That was in December of 2019. That was Carrington rotation 2225. So we're now 25 months or 27 Carrington rotations into solar cycle 25, which generally takes about 53 months to get from solar minimum to solar maximum. So we're about 48% of the way towards solar maximum. The solar B angle at the moment is -4 degrees, which means that we're seeing more of the southern hemisphere than we are of the northern hemisphere, i.e. the sun is tilted slightly away from us. Let's first take a look at the status of solar cycle 25 as far as sunspot number is concerned, and the monthly average sunspot number exceeded 70 for the first time this cycle. It is clear that the sunspot number is increasing faster during solar cycle 25 than it did during solar cycle 24. Just compare the left-hand side of this graph, which is the beginning of solar cycle 24, with the right-hand side of this graph, which is the beginning of solar cycle 25. And you can see it's a much faster and much larger rise. It is also increasing faster than the official NOAA and NASA forecast. That's shown here in red. The blue diamonds here show the actual data, and you can see it's well above the red curve. This means either the sunspot cycle is going to be early, peaking around something like 2024, as shown by this green curve, or it's going to be larger, as shown by this blue curve. Any sign of a grand solar minimum? In fact, no, the exact reverse. The daily sunspot number also exceeded 150 for the first time during this cycle. You can see it here in the green curve on the left. The sunspot situation when this curve peaked is shown here on the right, where you can see you had at least 3 major regions and 4 or 5 other tiny regions dotted around the sun, hence the very high average sunspot number. So we should take a look at the SDO HMI instrument and look at a sunspot movie to see how things have developed over this period from the 15th of December to the 11th of January 2022. Next, we'll take a look at how the corona is faring, and for that we're going to use the 171 angstrom movie from the Solar Dynamics Observatory AIA instrument. That's a temperature of about 0.7 million degrees Kelvin. With the high sunspot number, it's not surprising that we had a large number of flares. In total, I counted 254 C flares, 9 M flares, but no X flares. Now, this may be a little bit deceptive from the point of view that the X-ray background got up to just below the sea level, so it didn't actually require a very large event on top of that background to create a C flare. So the numbers may seem somewhat inflated. But it certainly was a spectacular month as far as flaring was concerned. Well, let's take a look at some of the larger events. The biggest event was an M1.9 flare on the 20th of December 2021 at 11:36. It was from region 2908, and you can see it here was near the center of the sun in the southern hemisphere, and the light curve for this flare in X-rays is shown on the right. There were 2 M flares on the 28th of December, both from active region 2918. The first was an M1.9 flare peaking at 0410 UT. The second was an M1.6 event at 1611 UT. We had 2 more M flares on the 21st of December 2021 from region 2916. That was on the southeast limb. The first one peaked at 0750 UT. The second one, the larger one, M1.5, peaking at 1144 UT. Here are some of the other M flares of that time. Note we had an M1.1 on the 1st of January, only just 7 hours into the new year. So that's our first M flare of 2022. So let's take a look at what the larger scale corona was doing. And for that, we're going to use the SOHO LASCO instrument and show a coronagraph movie over this same time period. The object coming in from the left is Venus. It's between us and the Sun and is quickly overtaking us. We had two geomagnetic storms during this rotation, one on the 19th of December, a low-level G1, but had an awful lot of associated disturbed magnetosphere both before and after the event. The second event was on the 9th of January. It too was a G1 event and was just a short-lived burst. And we believe this to be the result of a co-rotating interaction region. So a summary of what we've seen so far. Solar activity is at its highest level so far this cycle. 0 official spotless days during this particular Carrington rotation. Solar cycle 25 is rising about 30% faster than solar cycle 24. That seems an uptick from last month. That means the solar maximum will likely be larger and or earlier than that was forecasted by NOAA and NASA. Let's take a look at potentially what we will see in the coming year. Using helioseismology, we can image the far side of the Sun and see shadows of magnetic structures on the surface of the Sun on the back side. And the SDO HMI instrument indicates that there are 5 regions on the back of the Sun that could potentially produce sunspots when it comes over the limb. You see on the far right there is one very close to the limb, and in fact that's visible from the stereo spacecraft. The dashed line there indicates the limb as we see it from Earth, but stereo being to our east allows us to see a little bit over the limb. You can see the first of those 5 regions just coming into the stereo field of view. It doesn't look all that spectacular, so maybe it won't have any spots. So what can we expect in 2022 as far as sunspots are concerned? There's been an increasing number of solar cycle 25 regions over the last 3 years, shown here in blue, and a decreasing number of solar cycle 24 regions, shown in orange. I suspect we'll have few or no solar cycle 24 regions in 2022. We had between 200 and 300 regions in 2021. I'm forecasting we will nearly double that number to be between 500 and 600 regions in 2022. Those regions will be larger and longer lasting than we've seen so far. It will be a similar story for flares. Now note here that the scale on the left is logarithmic. We saw over 500 C flares in 2021, 30 M flares and 2 X flares. All those numbers should increase in 2022. I'm estimating rather optimistically between 5 and 10 X flares in that year, between 50 and 70 M flares in 2022, and something upward of 600 to 1,000 C flares in that year. For more information, you can always see my near real-time solar events and climate updates on my Twitter channel, same moniker as here, RK Strong. And of course, I try to do these Sun Today videos on YouTube, which tell you what's going on in the last 24 hours. So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.